However, once it's on the battlefield and it's so hard to remove, it just completely takes over the game. And that's true of the Rogues matchup as well. And this deck is able to get it down.
All right, looks like both players are happy with their openers here. Let's see what they're working with. Luca Magni has a Fire Prophecy and a Stomp for some early interaction, as well as Brazen Borrower and the Acroan War. Looking over at Eli's hand. Oh, a lot of 1-drops here. Double Merfolk, Windrobber, Ruin Crab, Soaring Thought Thief, and Eliminate. Nice hands for both players.
Yeah, unfortunately for Eli, we see the awkward Rogues mana base strike again. Only 2 Fabled Passages in his opening hand. So basically playing 2 tap lands for the first 2 turns of the game. It does have the Ruin Crab to at least get 6 cards of mill from the second Fabled Passage, but no aggressive start that we've seen from Rogues in the past that can be leveraged to put Temur on the back foot. And if putting them on the back foot is relevant against the regular build of Temur Adventures that we see, it is extra relevant against the specific build, which has a bigger end game and a more explosive mid game by being able to use a card like Luca Coppercoast's Outcast to go searching up Coma.
And here we are already going to see the advantage of choosing to forego the Obosh, because Luca Magni is able to play a 2-mana removal spell on turn 2 and deal with that crab straight away.
Yeah, having adventure creatures, having Stomp and Petty Theft is great, but they only deal 2 damage. They only bounce. They aren't a permanent answer. And again, Eli draws a swamp. You see him struggling with blue sources.
That is the thing with the Dimir Rogues mana base. You need single blue on turn 1. You need single black on turn 1. You need blue and black on turn 2. You need blue, 2 on turn 4. Like it's just a mess. There's just so many mana symbols and so few dual lands that are able to provide both types of mana. So you do often see these Rogues players getting caught in a situation where, 2 swamps would be great if you had 2 copies of Thieves Guild Enforcer in hand, but it does nothing for this Soaring Thought Thief.
Right? It doesn't feel like the deck should be as mana intensive or color intensive as it is. It's a 2-color deck with a lot of card advantage. The big problem is you have a very low curve. So after turn 2, after turn 3, you're really trying to play multiple spells in a turn, whether it's a removal spell plus a counter spell, a creature plus a counter, or 2 creatures. You're really trying to leave up multiple spells. So when you find yourself in this position where you can only do one thing with your mana, that slows down your game plan significantly, and you're not getting anything out of it.
Right, and the dual lands that you do have, like we see here with this Templar of Deceit, often come in tapped. So Eli taking a little bit of an awkward first couple of turns, unable to really develop out at the pace that he would prefer, but does end up getting the second copy of Merfolk Windrobber down.
Yeah,
we are gonna see Luca actually just flash out the Brazen Borrower in the end step instead of maybe using a Stomp or a Petty Theft to deal with the board.
Yeah, I think at the moment really wants to use his mana more efficiently, recognizing that on 3 I want to use 3, so on 4 I can go 2 and 2. And if he used one of the adventure cards there, he wouldn't have any board development. So this is just a way for Luca to maximize the fact and opportunity that he does have a lot to do with his mana, and he wants to be able to leave up negate and an adventure card, wants to have something on the board so he doesn't have to act, and maybe be able to clear off both these Merfolk Windrobbers next turn.
He's actually thinking about whether to send in with this Brazen Borrower here. Decides to go for it.
Yeah, essentially giving Eli the choice of whether he wants to eliminate now, but he doesn't really have to, as 3 damage not the biggest deal here. But does he want to trade, or does he want to keep both Windrobbers back?
Looks like it is going to be the trade. I think Eli, having gotten off to this slightly slower start than he would have liked, trying to preserve the life total there and get to that point where he feels set up and comfortable in the flow of things. Luca finds, has a lot of all the mana available. We've been talking a lot about the mana base of this Temur deck throughout the past couple of rounds. And we see Luca here just sitting back on this stomp and negate.
Yeah, actually not even opting to use Stomp there, as there are plenty of cards in the graveyard, so if at any point he actually wanted to go for a Stomp on this Merfolk Windrobber, it would have just gotten sacrificed and prevented the Stomp from resolving, prevented the Bonecrusher Giant from going into the Adventure Zone. So Luca can't really do anything but just watch.
Here's the Soaring Thought Thief. Negate obviously can't say anything about that. And what are the big targets for a Chrome War in this matchup?
Lurrus would be the biggest one, but Lurrus is also a great target for Stomp, so not really something that you're overly prioritizing saving a Corona War for. I think something like Soaring Thought Thief is excellent, one, because it removes a creature that you have a harder time answering, and two, because a 1/3 flyer against this Rogues deck is nothing to scoff at. It does a great job of shutting down a lot of their other potential attacks, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a Corona War go after the Soaring Thought Thief here.
Luca Magni cycling into Temple of Epiphany in the end step finds the Edgewall Innkeeper for turn. Looks like that's going to come down, and we may see Luca just try and draw some cards off this Bonecrusher Giant.
Yeah, this is the same story that we've seen time and time again from Rogues against Temur Adventures, where Temur holding some awkward cards that maybe don't line up so well in the matchup, forced to make proactive plays in order to stabilize their position, but that plays right into Rogue's game plan of having reactive spells that are waiting for your opponent to blink first.
Well, at the very least, though, Luca is going to be able to draw an extra card from that Edgewall Innkeeper. And Eli sitting back on, multiple instant speed spells. Thieves Guild Enforcer, that one's going to come down to a little bit more milling. And Marnie, one thing that, a lot of these players talk about when you're talking about Dimir Rogues is at all times really knowing how you're going to end this game, whether you're going to kill them with damage or whether you're going for the mill plan. But what are some of the clues that you might have to figure out where you are in the matchup?
You have to be looking at, is the pace at which I'm attacking going to be good enough to close out the game before my opponent stabilizes the board? Because if Luca had multiple Brazen Borrowers in the Adventure Zone here, for example, and Eli could see a path for Luca to present enough blockers that would get these creatures off the board, he may be looking more forward to a mill game plan. But at the moment, Eli knows that Luca hasn't really been using his mana that much. He hasn't been able to get a board presence. He hasn't been able to deal with these creatures. So there's no reason for him to assume that he needs to sit back or win by milling.
Last Struck Beast off the top. That's usually a nice one when you're getting beaten down, but of course, most of the threats on the other side of the battlefield are going to fly straight over.
Oh, and Luca casting Heart's Desire does give Eli the opportunity to use a negate on this if he wanted to, and try to prevent Luca from drawing a card off of it.
Decided not to go for that, though. Going to save that negate for something that actually, threatens Eli's ability to close this one off.
Yeah, at this point, with the Edgewall Innkeeper in play, the Thieves Guild Enforcer wasn't getting through for damage next turn anyways, so Eli counting on closing this game out in 2 turns means that he would rather save his negate and Drown in the Loch for the ability to protect these flyers that are really pushing that damage through over the finish line.
There's Coma Cosmos Serpent on the top of the library for Luca Magni, but that's not going to help him this turn, and that is going to have to be sent away. Off into the story off the top for Eli Kassis. Doesn't even need it.
Yeah, unfortunately,
down to 2 goes Luca.
Too little, too late at this point with this board state for Coma to save things.
Landmark Visionary was the draw. That could potentially be a redraw here for Luca Magni, although what is there really left in his deck that gets him out of this sticky situation?
Luca needs something like another copy of Fire Prophecy, but he only plays one. He would be drawing to maybe another Petty Theft, but unfortunately, Petty Theft on Soaring Thought Thief would still allow the flash creature to be redeployed mid-combat and pump the Wind Robber for lethal. So there aren't really any outs that keep Luca alive, and there certainly aren't any that keep him alive through two pieces of interaction from Eli.
Yeah, Eli sitting back, safe in the knowledge that Negate and Drown on the Lock are going to be able to do it. Luca is going to fight, but is going to see the bad news very shortly. And of course, not even going to counter the negate, but counter the Achrome War itself, and that is going to do it. We are going to game number 2 here in the final round of Standard on day 1 of April Strixhaven League weekend.
Yeah, just Rogues doing Rogues things. We've seen why the matchup is considered to be heavily favored for the Rogues deck, and even against this slightly stranger build of Temur Adventures, Eli not really blinking at all.
All right, let's have a look at the sideboards for both players. Luca Magni siding out part of the combo. A copy of Coma is going to leave the main deck as well as a couple of copies of Luca. And we see those 2 copies of Phoenix of Ash, the escape cards, being so key in most of these players' anti-rogue strategies.
We also see a funny adventure card that has seen a lot of play in Standard, but not in Temur Adventures. We see 3 copies of Rimrock Knight coming in to perhaps go a bit more aggressive, a luxury this build of Temur Adventures has that the Obosh builds do not have access to.
I mean, it seems crazy, but actually when you think about it, it does make sense, right? Rogues, they don't like early pressure. Sometimes, they stumble on their mana base a little bit, like we saw in the previous game, or they get off to a bit of a slower start with just a couple of Merfolk Wind Robbers, and you can really push through a lot of damage in the early game if you're willing to throw your Bone Crusher Giants, throw your Brazen Borrowers out there. So maybe this aggressive slant that Luke is taking has worked for him. We'll see whether that does pan out. As for Eli, just a few small changes, a couple more copies of Cling to Dust, and a couple of copies of Epic Downfall.
Yeah, really brought the removal spell of choice for comas everywhere to this to this battle. As Epic Downfall, one of the cleanest answers that you can have to a coma at sorcery speed.
Yeah, normally you think when you have a coma, as soon as that first serpent token is made, you feel very safe because it does give you indestructible, but Epic Downfall does not care about that. Oof, 6 hands in the opener for Eli. Looks like a mulligan to me.
It sure does. And Luca really thinking about this hand. Obviously, after boarding out 2 copies of Luca, the natural conclusion is he should draw the other 2 copies. But
of course,
the hand is still good. He has Edgewall Innkeeper to lead things off, Lattimore Visionary on 3, and if he finds a 4th land, he could have Luca into coma on turn 4, assuming there's no interaction from Eli.
The interesting thing, though, Mani, about this Temur Adventures deck with coma is that sometimes when you see these coma or transmogrify strategies, players don't play any other creatures in their deck, right? Like they're trying to turbo out specifically coma, but this deck is full of creatures. So you could end up doing something like sacrificing your 3-drop, your Llanowar Visionary, and then hitting a 1-drop.
Well, Luca is you get a creature with higher converted mana cost. That's part of the design aspects of. Oh my god!
Oh my goodness!
That doesn't matter
no!
right
now. Okay, you know what? Scratch that.
Luca's entire
Stop
game
explaining why I was wrong, Manny, and let's just focus down on what's going on here. Edgewall Innkeeper on turn number 1. You can see the look on Luca's face. Coma, the absolute worst draw in the deck here, as Ruin Crab comes down and starts the mill train going for Eli Kassis.
Now, I don't want to make it seem like Luca Coppertooth Outcast is useless now that the coma has been drawn. The 5-mana Planeswalker is still a source of card advantage. The plus ability lets you cast creature cards of which the deck is full of. So it does still have a use in terms of trying to grind this Dimir Rogues deck from Eli Kassis, but Luca kept this hand with 2 copies of Luca, with the entire game plan of going turn 3 Visionary, turn 4 Luca into Coma. Drawing that Coma just completely makes this plan fall apart.
Yeah, Marnie, there is hope though, because I believe Lucas sided in a bunch more copies of Fire Prophecy. I think 3 more copies of Fire Prophecy from the sideboard, and that does allow you to put a card back into your library from your hand. So now, the game plan may be shifting a little bit for Luca, where if he can find one of those 4 copies, he can actually remove a threat on the other side of the battlefield and set himself back up for the combo.
And we've been talking about this so much, but this may actually be a blessing in disguise for Luca Magni, as there's an epic downfall in Eli's hand. If he had gone all in for this plan, as a Fire Prophecy you mentioned gets milled immediately, if he had gone all in on this Coma plan and just gotten an epic downfall and this Luca got answered, that could have been disastrous for Luca.
Right now, that epic downfall looking more like it's going to take out something like a Bone Crusher Giant later on. And here's the cheeky attack with the Edgewell Innkeeper.
Yeah, this is a pretty telegraphed stomp, so Eli has to ask himself, do I care about the milling capabilities of this Ruin Crab, or do I want to essentially make Luca pay the tempo cost of using Stomp on my creature here?
And we talked about it before in round number 1, but Eli Kassis may be thinking, Luca bringing in these Phoenixes of Ash from the sideboard, Crab isn't as good in games 2 and 3 as it was maybe in game number 1.
Yeah, the biggest difference we see between Luca's list and Javier's list that we saw earlier, no copies of Clothis, only 2 Phoenix of Ash as the escape creatures, whereas Javier had 3 Ox of Agonis. So the cost of milling a Phoenix, less relevant here in this game than the game we saw earlier. So Eli not boarding out any copies of Crab, but still prioritizing tempo here over the milling that this Crab would eventually provide.
All right, it is going to be after a little bit of consideration where Eli Kassis said, okay, I'll call your bluff. I'm going to block this 1/1. And Luca now has to actually decide whether he's going to follow through, and does indeed choose to follow through, but that does mean it's going to be 2 mana left unused this turn for Luca Magni.
Yeah, Luca paid the tempo tax, and Eli is happy about that. We talked a lot about Epic Downfall and its value against Coma, but this is a really smart card choice from Eli. This is a card that is a clean answer to escape creatures like Phoenix of Ash and Ox of Agonis, the ways people try to attack Dimir Rogues from Temur decks, and it's a permanent answer.
It is a permanent answer. It is at sorcery speed, so usually these rogues decks, they like to play at instant speed. They like to leave their mana up, but at only 2 mana to deal with some of the most annoying permanents on the other side of the battlefield, definitely seems worth it. And we're going to see Luca try and find the 5th land, but man, these Temur mana bases are not treating people well today, Marnie.
Yeah, really just losing that Llanowar Visionary that he played earlier, hoping to be his 5th source of mana, and failing to draw that 5th land has been extremely costly for Luca, as it just hasn't been able to make the most of the card advantage that he has access to.
No, we're going to see Ruin Crab keep going, and wow, Soaring Thought Thief to join the party as well. And on the subject of these Temur mana bases, Marnie, I recall, before the Cowdame Championship a couple of weekends ago, Chris Patello, another Rivals League member, actually one of the big driving forces behind these Temur decks, actually tweeted that rule number 1 of playing these decks is do not make eye contact with the mana base. It is skittish and easily frightened. The mana base may come up to you and ask for pets. This is acceptable, but do not make eye contact with the mana base. And I think a lot of our players here are really feeling the truth of those words this weekend. Oh, there's the Fire Prophecy.
Yeah, it's an answer to Soaring Thought Thief, but with Lorison on deck here for Eli. It's not a permanent answer, so it's a way of getting rid of this coma, but this is not the position Luca wanted to find himself in, and we see those 2 copies of Luca kept in hand from the opener still sitting there unused.
Here, Luca just really thinking about how to do this, because he does have the option of using a Fire Prophecy to try and find the 5th land and then maybe going into the 3-drop from there, but instead decides to use the draw ability of Edgeworld Innkeeper.
The sequencing logic from Luca there does make sense. It is sound. If you lead off with Fire Prophecy and your opponent has a counter spell, you won't get to filter the card, and you are stuck having used your mana efficiently. By casting the Lovestruck Beast, you're guaranteed to see that card that you would see anyways. And then if you hit the land, you can go to Fire Prophecy from there. So Luca trying to play it safe, but it doesn't matter when his deck's just not cooperating and giving him that land.
Let's see whether Eli's deck is going to cooperate and help him maybe close out this game number 2. Already a game up, of course. And here is Drown on the Lot going to take care of the 5/5 Lovestruck Beast. And Marnie, we've talked about this kind of not only this weekend, but really over the life of this standard format. This Rogues deck is just so good at answering pretty much every threat that is presented to it.
Yeah, part of it is just being able to play Lurrus and having these opportunities to just play Lurrus, get Merfolk Windrobber back, and then draw another card. If your opponent isn't able to deal with this board, continue drawing cards. It's so tough for these decks to keep up.
And especially, you can see it on Luca Magni's face that I would have exactly the same expression if I fail to find my 5th land, 3 or 4 turns in a row now. Bonecrusher Giant is another answer to Lurrus, potentially.
Yeah, Luca now considering what is my sequencing on these spells going to be. Obviously, Eli still does have 1 card left in hand. It could be a counter spell. So Luca's question is, do I want my stop countered first, or do I want my Fire Prophecy countered? 1 comes with a 4/3 creature. 1 gives him another look at that 5th land.
And now, the information is out there. The cat's out of the bag. Luca knows there was no counterspell to protect Lurrus, and is going to swing in with the team before deciding what to do with the rest of this turn.
I expect now that Lurrus is gone, Luca will prioritize getting rid of the Soaring Thought Thief as it is the primary source of pressure currently left on Eli's board. He'll likely respond to this card draw by just getting rid of the Thought Thief before Eli draws a card, as he does feel fairly safe there isn't a counterspell waiting in the wings.
There it is, land number 5, finally. But is it too little too late for Luca Magni?
Technically, no. The Epic Downfall is still there, but the Coma's back in the deck. Now, there is a decent multi-turn sequence that he has available to him, and with 22 cards left, 16 after these 2 triggers of Ruin Crab, there's still time for Luca Magni to bring this game back.
And, Eli Kassis, after starting out so strong in this game number 2, is just left with that singleton copy of Epic Downfall, and Luca knows, or at least semi-knows, that it's, not going to be a fresh counterspell that was drawn off the top. And we are going to see whether Luca can claw his way back into this one. Not a land again off the top.
Yeah, these Llanowar Visionaries, all the more awkward considering at some point drawing a card is a real liability for Luca, and he may not be able to deploy all of these by the end of the game.
All right, here we go. Luca, putting Luca on the stack. It's going to resolve. We are going to see Bonecrusher Giant, which is the main threat for Luca right now, being sacrificed away or exiled away.
Yeah, Eli going to go for the mill, try to hit the Coma. We know, and Luca knows the Coma's on the bottom of the deck. No danger of that.
All right, Coma, Cosmic Serpent. the 3-3 has been made, but Eli Kassis, who has been holding this epic downfall for so many turns now, is just going to snap that off immediately. Luca just, must be thinking, can I catch a break or what?
This is now Luca trying to calculate what is the rest of this game looking like. Do I sacrifice the Serpent to tap the Soaring Thought Thief? Do I try to keep it alive? Ultimately recognizes he needs the clock, and this is a benefit for Luca. Eli doesn't know that the second coma has been boarded out, so he needs to attack the Luca and try to get it off the battlefield.
All right, looks like it's time for the escape creatures to come into play. Phoenix of Ash coming out of the graveyard. That was milled there by one of those Ruin Crab triggers earlier on. And when it comes back, it is going to come back as a 3-3. Does have haste as well.
Yeah, and we are never going to see Luca activate the plus ability of his Planeswalker. Not with 9 cards left, at least.
This one really coming down to the wire now. Eli has a drown on the lock, can deal with one of these threats, but Phoenix of Ash, that's just going to be coming straight back next turn. Maybe just thinking about getting rid of this token here.
It is possible. He does have a clean block on the Edgewall Innkeeper. Definitely does not want to take the full damage here. So we'll see Drown target something. The Phoenix of Ash getting targeted is both a temple play on against Luca, and it also forces Luca to not have the option of pumping next turn, which he could do with all of his mana if he left the Phoenix alive, which would be a lethal attack. So that's a good draw.
Oh, cling to dust for Eli Kassis, and that Phoenix of Ashes sitting in the graveyard temptingly.
That might be
just
game.
Ready to be sniped away. Cling to dust. What a card.
Oh, and a Fabled Passage. Oh.
Jeez. So Eli actually decides not to take out the Phoenix of Ash. Gonna just take out a land from the graveyard, get a redraw, finds the Fabled Passage. That's going to be 6 more cards milled into the graveyard, and we don't have the precise count, but it's got to be like 1 or 2 cards left for Luca Magni.
Now 1 after that attack, and now we'll see the Phoenix likely get exiled, going up to 11. Doesn't need a card draw here, and just tell Luca, all right, your move. You have a turn.
And both Lucas that we see on screen being somewhat threatened now in this last couple of turns of game number 2. Cling to Dust, just wiping away that Phoenix of Ash. Lovestruck Beast off the top. We are going to see the GGs being extended. And Luca Magni knows with an empty library, that's not going to do it. Goes out in style, though. Goes out on his own terms, and Eli Kassis going 3-0 this morning in Standard in the Rivals League.
Yeah, going into the Kaldheim Championship, Eli was tied for the leader of the Rivals League with Stan Cifka. With a 3-0 in this Pod 1, he is reclaiming that title of first place and really trying to make a push at that first place finish over this weekend.
All right, let's just have a look at what we have got coming up for you after the break. We're going to be bringing you more magic from the Rivals League. It is Matt Sperling who, before this round, was joint top of the rival standings up against Zachary Kiihne. You can see their points totals there, 33 points against 30 points. And it's another Rogues versus Adventures, but this time the Adventures is a little bit of a different flavor. Naya Adventures in the hand of Zachary Kiihne. We will be bringing that to you after the break, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to coverage of the April Strixhaven League weekend. My name's Haya, and I'm here with Mani Davudi. And we are in our final round of Standard for the day. We have each day, it's going to be 3 rounds of Standard, followed by 3 rounds of Historic. And we are just coming to the end of our first pod of Standard. And we're currently in the League, which is where we're going to take for the second feature match of round number 3. It is going to be Matt Sperling, who was the leader in the standings before this round. He's going to have to win this match if he wants to keep up with Eli Kassis, who we just saw take that match down against Luca Magni. And he's up against Zachary Kiihne, both the players at 1-1 currently today. And if we have a look at the standings, we can see where they are right now. And you can see in orange where, the numbers where people have moved up and down in the rankings already today, Money.
Yeah, both players starting the day in this first pod, and for Zachary has a bit more work to do if he's going to try to take that number 1 spot by the end of the weekend, but isn't impossible, still completely within his grasp.
Yeah. Let's go to the deck list now of the players, and just a reminder of what's at stake here. If you come out on top of the Rivals League this weekend, you get to skip all of the kerfuffle that comes afterwards. You're going straight to Worlds, you're going straight into the MPL next year. So huge amounts at stake here for these players. Matt Sperling with Dimir Rogues, once again.
Yeah, this may look familiar because it is in fact the exact same 75 brought by Eli Kassis. Looks like despite the fact that the players were both in the Rivals League, both in the same pod and competing for the same results, that wasn't enough to sway them from wanting to work together. So they have worked together for this event and come here with the exact same build of Dimir Rogues.
Well, it worked for Kassis in the previous match that we saw. Let's see if it will work for Matt Sperling up against Zachary Kiihne, who has brought Naya Adventures. And my sense of deja vu is only increasing as we have Luca's Temur Adventures list up again. We are just going to get that fixed for you in 1 second, Mani. All right, Naya Adventures. 3 copies of Showdown of the Skulls, the big saga from Kaldheim that is really holding this deck together, Mani.
Yeah, this is part of the reason this deck is played over something like Temur Adventures is having access to Giant Killer as a removal spell for some of the other adventure decks running around, and Showdown of the Skulls, this huge card advantage engine that you get to run. Otherwise, this is basically Gruul Adventures, and Gruul Adventures has a very different matchup against Dimir Rogues than Temur Adventures does. Part of that being because of Brushfire Elemental, part of that because of Scavenging Ooze. Those cards are extremely good against the game plan that Rogues is bringing, and you cannot play those cards with Obosh.
And it's interesting to see, Mani, that Zachary Kiihne has gone for this build over something like a Clarion Spirit build or over something like a Fling, Dragon Fury build as well today.
Yeah, this is a big throwback to the Kaldheim League weekend that was standard, where we saw Eli Kassis and Reed Duke's team really bring this build of Naya Adventures, featuring the full 4 copies of the Great Henge, not messing around with anything like Goldspan Dragon or the token build of Toski Clarion Spirit. It was all about the adventure creatures and just resolving a Great Henge. So I really like this build, and I think with Rogues in mind, this was a great choice for the weekend. Zachary Kiihne has already beat Rogues once in the hands of Stan Sifka last round, so perhaps looking to do it again and put himself in the best position with a 2-1 start to this weekend.
All right, let's go down to the action. I want to see this Naya Adventures build and see whether it can take down Dimir Rogues, which is already kind of shaping up to be the baddie of the weekend. All right, Lovestruck Beast on turn number 1. Get that Heart's Desire token down. Bonecrusher Giant, Edgewell Innkeeper, and the Great Henge in hand. Nice start here for Zachary Kiihne.
Yeah, this is a pretty nice curve, having Innkeeper on 2 into 2 different potential adventure creatures on 3, quite useful. And something that's really unfortunate is these are two needle verge pathways for Zachary Kiihne. Neither of those have green on the backside. So the typical optimal line here of playing double Edgewall Innkeeper in order to protect yourself from a removal spell from Matt, not applicable here. And that means Matt has a great answer to what Zach's presenting.
Yeah, we do see that copy of Eliminate hanging out in Matt Sperling's hand. Does have a couple of copies of Drown in the Lock as well. Those aren't doing very much just yet, but that Merfolk Wind Robber is going to get the mill train going very shortly. Here comes Soaring Thought Thief. And that's going to mean 3 cards in the graveyard after this combat step. So Drown in the Lock is already turned on.
Yeah, Matt just saying he doesn't care about Edgewall Innkeeper. Zachary can have a card if he wants. He'll have to play Lovestruck Beast to do it, and that means he's not answering this board. Matt will get to keep milling cards, turn on all of the creatures that he has, as well as the 2 copies of Drown in the Lock in the hand that are more or less fully enabled now, and this is a pretty good position for Matt Sperling.
Now, if Matt continues to, kind of ignore the board of Zachary here, what effect does something like a turn 4 Great Henge have on this matchup?
Based on Matt's current game plan, it would be massive. If Matt didn't remove this Lovestruck Beast before Zachary casts the Great Henge, which I don't think Matt is going to walk into that trap, it would be pretty hard because the 2 life a turn as well as the extra cards would really mitigate the pressure Matt is presenting. Sometimes that's not a big issue if Matt was going for something like a Ruin Crab plan, but that's not this game. His draw is all about aggression.
All right, so we are going to see Bone Crusher Giant come down. A couple extra cards off these 2 Edgewall Innkeepers. Oh, what's better than 2 Edgewall Innkeepers, Marnie? It's going to be a 3rd one.
Out of adventure creatures for now, but Edgewall Innkeeper at least a solid redraw the next turn if Zachary is able to resolve a Great Henge. Unfortunately, with 2 Wind Robbers and a Soaring Thought Thief still on the battlefield, I think we're going to finally cross the threshold of Drown in the Loch being a hard counter for even the Great Henge.
And meanwhile, Zachary Kiihne has other issues. These flyers are going to do a number on his life total, and that number is 6. He is going down to 11. We have Matt just thinking about how to, navigate this situation. He has not found his 4th land just yet. And now he has.
Yeah, I love this decision from Matt by removing this Bone Crusher Giant to sorcery speed, once again turning off the Great Henge on Zachary's main phase, and also getting rid of most of the pressure that Zach has access to. Still 3 damage left on that side of the battlefield, but that's not really going to be enough to win the race against these flyers. And by sacrificing and finding that land, having access to this Drown in the Loch, meaning that if Zachary tries to compound the pressure with something like a Kazandu Mammoth this turn, Matt is ready, and then once he untaps, he has access to a counter spell or a removal spell or into the story, and the game is in his hands.
Does he have to be a little bit careful with his life total here?
A little for sure. You don't want to be getting burst down. Something that he can take solace in is knowing that this build from Zachary doesn't have something like Embercleave. It doesn't have something like Goldspan Dragon. So it's really just Brushfire Elemental that you need to be worried about. And at the moment, Matt is doing a good job of making sure to leave up a Drown in the Loch at all times. So a Brushfire Elemental plus a Fabled Passage can't just present a huge burst of damage.
Zachary is, in fact, going to deploy that 3rd Edgewall Innkeeper. The battlefield looking a little bit like an industry convention of hoteliers.
But who serves the innkeepers at the hotel bar?
Who innkeeps the innkeepers? Is that what you're asking?
I wasn't, but I guess I am now.
All right. Well, answers in the chat, please. Who's serving the drinks here at this party? And let me tell you, it's currently Matt Sperling serving the damage, and so much so that Zachary is gonna just pop off for a little bit.
Just bounced He's gone.
I'm out of here. Oh, it's story time. Into the story is gonna resolve 2 lands, Murphy Windrobber and Drown on the Lock. So many resources for Matt Sperling, and I think this one is all but over here in round number 3.
Well, this is scary. We were talking about how Matt was keeping up Drown in the Loch at all times to make sure he doesn't get burst down by something like a Brush Fire Elemental. He put the defenses down to cast that into the story, and that means that if Zach had it this turn, this would have been the window to really take advantage of that. At the moment, Matt doesn't have lethal on the attack back. That's only 6 damage. So there are still avenues of lethal for Zachary Kiihne.
Matt Sperling does get to untap, though, with 2 copies of Drown on the Lock. Finds a Cling to Dust as well.
That's a pretty excellent draw. It completely offsets the lethal math that Zachary might have by giving him access to 3 more life at instant speed. And with 2 copies of Drown on the Lock, I think now Matt Sperling has locked up this game.
Is there any consideration for leaving back maybe one of these Wind Robbers to block?
I think you can afford to now that you have an attack for 4, putting Zachary down to 3. By doing it this way, all of your creatures are guaranteed to be lethal, so there isn't really a combination of cards that Zachary can have with only 2 cards in hand to best your 2 Drown Locks and a Cling to Dust here.
So we think Drown on the Lock is going to take care of a couple of these threats on the other side of the battlefield. Mammoth, that's got to be the first to go.
Yeah, this is the one that needs to happen at sorcery speed just because of, again, the Great Henge. You've seen Matt utilize his instant speed removal at sorcery speed this entire game just to make sure Zachary can never take advantage of the Great Henge. And this game was just very, very well played by Matt Sperling.
Yeah, just always kept up that Drown on the Log, never gave Zachary Kiihne an opportunity to resolve that copy of the Great Henge that was rotting away in hand, and that is going to do it for game number 1 as we look at the sideboards here.
Yeah, post sideboard, many of the same options that we're used to seeing from Temur Adventures, available for Naya Adventures as well. 2 copies of Clothis, 3 copies of Oxabagonas. Those are the big ones. Kind of gets to compound that with some additional removal, 2 Scorching Dragonfires, and a Shredded Sails. Those are going to help a lot in dealing with the flyers that Matt Sperling is presenting, but actually not interested in the Shredded Sails at all.
Yeah, just going to be those 2 copies of Scorching Dragonfire. The Exile effect actually pretty relevant against a deck that's running Lurrus and, some number of Agadeem's Awakenings as well. Let's have a look at what Sperling is doing with his sideboard. We're going to be taking out these copies of Timuret.
Looks like a bit of a graphical bug there on the sideboarding coming out.
Money, have we completely misread what is going on in this deck? All right, let's talk about what's coming in. It's going to be some number of Epic Downfall, Crippling Fear, one of the new sweepers out of Kaldheim, which is just so good in this Rogues deck, and some extra copies of Cling to Dust as well.
Yeah, more Cling to Dust and a Soul Guide Lantern, just trying to be an answer for these Oxabagonas that we see Zachary bringing in. Crippling Fear, more or less the best sweeper spell that Rogues has access to, considering it only really gets rid of your Ruin Crab. And, that's a cost that you have to pay at that point in the game. But it is one of the only cards that Rogues got out of Kaldheim, and it is a powerful one.
And just a copy of Soul Guide Lantern as well to round out the sideboards. Let's go down to game number 2 and see whether Zachary Kiihne can pull it back. And, a bit of a reactive opening hand here. 5 Prophecy, Scorching Dragonfire, and Kazandu Mammoth.
Once again, the awkwardness of double Needleverge pathway, but Zachary fortunately has that Fabled Passage in hand to be the first of 2 green sources to get this Mammoth down on turn 3.
And let's see what Matt's working with. Thieves Guild Enforcer, the perfect 1-drop for the deck. Soaring Thought Thief, eliminate, and double Drown on the Lock. But Mani, here is what we were talking about as well earlier. untap land on turn number 1. That's very nice. Thieves Guild Enforcer is going to come down. But then that Temple of Deceit does not let you play the Soaring Thought Thief on 2.
Yeah, Matt's hand is pretty close to like a chef's kiss, but it's just like slightly off. If he's able to find an untapped land on turn 2, this hand is just absolute perfection. You have the compounding pressure of the Thieves Guild Enforcer and the Soaring Thought Thief. You're getting incidental mill. Your Drown in the Lost will be online thanks to Zachary's Fabled Passage already in the graveyard. And this is the dream hand for Matt Sperling, just missing a couple of lands.
Oh,
Never mind.
And never mind. There was the land. It was tucked away, hiding underneath the overlay. And we're going to see that Soaring Thought Thief come down after all. And, Chef's Kiss was called.
All right, a bit of a miscalculation. I believe there's only 7 cards in Zachary's graveyard, not 8. Matt just redoing the math after playing the card, unfortunately. So a slight misstep, but I don't think it's going to be the overall game changer here, as that is a creature that is demanding an answer from Matt Sperling. And yeah, if he doesn't, now with this play, Zachary is essentially allowing Matt to attack with the Thought Thief and get the last mills he needed. Oh, this hand is insane.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So we are going to see eliminate, deal with the Lovestruck Beast. Let's get that off the battlefield. And then this attack is going to put enough cards in the graveyard that Thieves Guild Enforcer becomes a 4/2. Pressure on for Matt Sperling.
Another Drown in the Loch on top. Matt Sperling just really, really making sure that Zach is drowning in that loch, as this game is just, it's so tough for Zachary Kiihne right now.
And this is, what it feels like to play against this Rogues deck. When they're going off like this, when they're going, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3 copies of Drown in the Loch in hand into the story that's just going to draw 4 cards. It just feels like it's, such a huge uphill climb, rolling the boulder up the mountain for Zachary Kiihne here.
He's used so many resources to deal with what this Rogues deck presented in early pressure. And now that he's got a moment to breathe, Matt Sperling is going to go, into the story. 4 more cards.
You thought I wasn't doing anything this turn? No, I'm going to draw 2 more removal spells, another Thieves Guild Enforcer, and a Ruin Crab for good measure. Why not?
Yeah, I expect this turn Matt will just remove the Kazandu Mammoth. He's been extremely consistent this entire match, making sure that the Great Henge never comes down, and I believe the story will continue to be that as he goes forward.
And, we talked about Zachary Kiihne's Adventures list being more of an aggressively slanted deck, has less of the card advantage value stuff going on than the Temur list, but does have more of an explosive start with the Brushfire Elementals. And the danger of that money, the flip side is that when you're in these situations and you're top decking, really the big top deck you're looking for is something like a Showdown of the Skulls, whereas your 2-drop Brushfire Elemental that's going to attack for 1 with haste isn't quite as good now as it would have been earlier on.
Not really getting the job done, as Zachary Kiihne looking on in despair as this game slips away from him. And for Matt Sperling, this Rogues deck was a pretty great choice. Like we mentioned earlier, him and Eli Kassis brought the exact same Rogues deck to this Rivals League weekend. They were both in Pod 1, and Eli went 3-0. Matt is about to be 2-1. Matt's only loss was to Eli in the first round today. Their list is undefeated against everything but itself if Matt can close out this game.
And he's looking like he's in a great position to do so, already having taken game number 1. And there's that second green source for Zachary Kiihne to be able to play out this Lovestruck Beast. But then he's empty-handed, and Matt Sperling is the opposite of empty-handed.
No, he's close. He's down to 4 cards. It's okay.
Oh, down to 4 cards.
He's almost there.
Almost there.
Just like a little bit longer and he'll be out of cards.
Matt Sperling has invented like a perpetual motion machine, just never running out of gas here. Oh, there's the Brushfire Elemental, but as we say, you're empty-handed. What's a 1/1 with haste doing now with your opponents at 17 and
I believe this was
beating
the
you down
Brushfire
with your
prophecy you told earlier.
Me just seeing the future.
Yeah.
Oh, and a couple of Ruin Crabs as well for good measure. Polaris in hand. That's the 8th card.
Yeah, with with no copies of Cling to Dust in hand, I believe we're not going to see Matt Sperling interested in milling any cards from Zachary Kiihne for the time being. It doesn't want to put Osavagonos in that graveyard without having a way to answer it, and perfectly content just trying to win this game through damage, considering Zachary Kiihne is already at 8 life.
So Lurrus can come down. I believe there's at least one Soaring Thought Thief in the graveyard.
One is all it takes.
One is all it takes. Well, I mean, you could, if you're Matt Sperling, you would like to get another one to just really slam the door shut as quickly as you can. But here we go, Thieves Guild Enforcer. So Soaring Thought Thief is going to come down and pump the power there by 1. I think you're right, Marnie. Matt really trying not to mill as much as you can. Oh, Ox of Agonis, can that do anything?
You can get countered by a Drown in the Loch.
That does not qualify as doing something.
It tried its best. I don't think you should diminish. The aggressive.
Oh, the arena GGs there from Matt Sperling. That is going to do it.